dividing by decimals. In today's lesson, we will be looking at dividing by decimals. We will need to have an understanding of simplifying fractions and also multiplying numbers by 10, 100, 1,000, and also knowing that we can write decimals as a fraction or the sum as a fraction. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. We're going to look at 5.6 divided by 0.07. Okay, I can rewrite this as 5.6 divided by 0.07. Now that's exactly the same thing. 5.6 divided by 0.07 at the top is exactly the same as me writing as a fraction because that line there means divide. Now at the moment I can't really do anything with this fraction because I've got decimals in it, and we all know that in fractions we don't have decimals. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of the decimals, okay? So 5.6 has one decimal place and 0.07 has two decimal places. So let's have a look at 0.07 because that's got the most number of decimal places. What can I do to 0.07 so that it ends up as a whole number? This is where you need to have your understanding of multiplying decimals by 10, 100 and 1,000, because that's what normally is, isn't it? You could times the number by 10, 100, 1,000 and so on to change it into a whole number. Now, because it's got two decimal places, I'm going to times it by 100. Now, remember, whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do the exact same to the top. Okay, now 0.07 times by 100 is going to just become 7. And then 5.6 times by 100 is going to become 560. Okay, now we've got 560 divided by 7. So in this situation, I can use my dividing method to divide 560 divided by 7. And let's see what the answer is. How many 7s go into 5? None. Carry the 5 over. How many 7s into 56? It's 8. And then how many 7s into 0 is 0. So the answer is 80. So 5.6 divided by 0.07 is 80. Okay. Let's have a look at another example then. Let's do 44 divided by 0.11. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this as a fraction. 44 divided by 0.11. The top number, the numerator, or you can call it top number, does not have a decimal. So we're looking at the bottom one. The bottom one is a decimal number. It's got two decimal places. So what am I going to times 0.11 by to turn it into a whole number? I'm going to times it by 100. So whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do the top. It has to be the same. So 44 times by 100 is 4,400. And 0.11 times by 100 is 11. Okay. Now, I can't simplify that. So I can use my division method to divide. So let's have a look what happens. 4,400 divided by 11. Okay, how many 11s into 4? 0. I'm going to carry the 4 over. How many 11s into 44 is 4? 11s into 0, 0. 11 into 0, 0. So the answer is 400. 44 divided by 0.11 is 400. Okay, let's have a look at some other questions then. Okay, we've got 28 divided by 0.4. Okay, so again, let's write that as a fraction. 28 divided by 0.4. Some of these are easy, some of these are quite tricky. So we'll do a range of questions. We'll do some simple ones and some trickier ones. So again, the top numerator does not have a decimal, so we're just looking at the bottom one. What do I times 0.4 by so it ends up as a whole number? Well, it's only got one decimal place, so I'm going to times it by 10. Remember, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, or vice versa. Okay, so 28 divided by 10 is 280, and 0.4 divided by 10 is 4. Now, I can use my division method here if I want to, or I can automatically see here that they're both even numbers, so I can just divide them both by 2, and it's quite easy to do that in my head. So 280 divided by 2 is 140, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. I know again I can half it, can't I? 140 divided by 2 is 70, and that's my answer. So sometimes you don't even have to use the division method. You might be able to just simplify your fraction and get the answer like that. Okay, let's have a look at another one. Let's do something like this, 2.1 divided by 3. Okay, so again, we're going to use the exact same method. 2.1 divided by 3 as a fraction. We haven't got a decimal at the bottom, so we just look at the top. What do I do to 2.1 so it turns into a whole number? Well, I can times it by 10. So I have to do exactly the same to the bottom. Remember, you do exactly the same. 2.1 times by 10 is 21, and 3 divided by 10 is 30. Okay. Now, again, I can use division, but it'll just get a bit complicated. So can we actually simplify this fraction? I can, because I know that 21 and 30 are both in the 3 times table. So I can divide them both by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. Now, this is pretty simple and straightforward now, because I know what 7/10 are as a decimal. 7 divided by 10 is 0.7. So you can see there's a range of skills here. You are writing your question as a fraction. You are then finding an equivalent fraction by getting rid of the decimal. And then you are simplifying your fraction. So you need to know your factors here again in order to simplify. Okay, let's have a look at another example. Okay, this time round, let's do 28 divided by 0.7 again, similar to the one that we've just done. Write as a fraction. Numerator does not have a decimal, so the denominator does. What do I times 0.7 by? So it becomes a whole number. It's 10 times the bottom by 10, so times the top by 10 also. 28 times 10, 280. And 0.7 times 10 is just 7. Okay, I can't simplify this. I can just automatically do 280 divided by 7. How many 7s into 2? 0. Carry the 2 over. How many 7s into 28? 4. How many 7s into 0? 0. So the answer is 40. Okay. Let's have a look at a slightly complicated example then. 0.54 divided by 0.06. Okay. Let's write this as a fraction. Okay. Now both of these numbers have a decimal with them, and they both are have 2 decimal places with them. So what am I going to times 0.54 and 0.06 by? Obviously it's going to be the same number because they both have the same number of decimal places. What can I times it by to become a whole number? It's going to be 100. Okay. 0.54 times by 100 is 54. 0.06 times by 100 is just 6. Okay. Sometimes it's easier if you're stuck. Obviously, you're going to do 2 jumps, and decimal point goes there. So obviously 0, 0, 6. Decimal point on the outside. The answer is just 6. If you want to do it that way, and you can't do it on the top of your head, you can also do it like this. Okay, so I could do 54 divided by 6 straight off. It's 9. Okay, or if you were struggling with that, you could have halved. Okay, so we could do half of 54 at the top is 27. Half of 6 is 3. And now we could do 27 divided by 3, which is 9. So if the numbers are too big for you, maybe see if you can simplify your fraction beforehand, and that might be able to help you out a little bit. Okay, let's do another one. 201 divided by 0.3 this time, slightly bigger number. Write your number as a fraction. Numerator does not have a decimal with it, but the denominator does. It's just 1 decimal place, so I'm going to times it by 10. I've got to do exactly the same at the top. 201 times 10 is 2010, and 0.3 times 10 is 3. We've got no choice here but to do the division. Okay. Right, how many 3's into 2? None. How many 3's into 20 is 6, isn't it? Which is 18, so I'm left with 2 left over. How many 3's into 21 is 7? How many 3's into 0, 0? Answer is 670. Okay. Okay, a few more. Let's have a look at 50.4 divided by 0.07. So let's write as a fraction. So the top number, which is a numerator, only has 1 decimal place, but the bottom number has 2 decimal places. So look at the number always that has the most decimal places, because you're going to have to make obviously both numbers a whole number. And so let's have a look. 0.07, what can I times it by? It's got 2 decimal places. I can times it by 100. Do exactly the same to the top. Okay, so again, obviously if you're unsure, you could do the jumps with the decimal point. 1, 2. Okay, so it's 5040, so 5040. 0.07, let's do the jumps. 1, 2, it's just 7. And here again, let's do our division. 7 into 5 is 0. So carry the 5 over. 7 into 50 is 7. 49, so 1 left over. 7 into 14 is 2. 7 into 0 is 0. So the answer is 720. Okay. Few more examples. Okay. Let's have a look at 9.57 divided by 0.11. Okay. So again, 9.57 divided by 0.11 as a fraction, write it out. Both of them have 2 decimal places, which means I'm going to times it by 100 to get rid of the decimal point. Oops, don't need to do that, times by 100. So again, if you're unsure, do the jumps with the decimal point. 1, 2 jumps, it becomes 957. Below 0.11, 1, 2 jumps becomes 11. Yeah, because it's 0, 11 there. Okay, so now we can't simplify this. It looks a bit tricky because of the numbers. They don't look very pleasant, do they? So let's write it down. How many 11s into 90? Okay, how many 11s into 95? It's going to be 8, isn't it? Yeah, because 11 times 9 is 88. How many left over? It's 7. And how many 11s into 77 is 7? So the answer is 87. Okay. Right, let's have a look at another example. Let's do 712 divided by divided by 0.08. Okay, so again, write your number as a fraction. Numerator does not have a decimal place or decimal number, but the bottom number is. It's got 2 decimal places, therefore I'm going to times the number by 100. But I have to do exactly the same to the top. That's pretty simple. Okay, so 71,200. 0.08, so let's do the jumps. 1, 2, it's just 8. Okay, right, you've got 2 choices here now. I can see automatically that both the numbers are even. So it's up to you. You can either use the short division to do the division straight away, or you can half. So we can half, or we can just divide by 8. Let's divide by 8 because I think that seems to be a bit easier. Okay. How many 8s into 7? 0. So I'm going to carry the 7 1. Okay, how many 8s into 71? Well, 8 times 9 is 72. Can't be that. So it has to be 8 times 8, okay, which is 64. So how many is left over? It's 7. How many 8s into 72? It has to be 9, because 8 times 9 is 72. How many 8s into 0? 0. How many 8s into 0? 0. It's 8,900. Okay, and you can see here that obviously that the numbers are quite big. It's quite tricky to do, so take your time when doing this. Let's have a look at another example before we finish our lesson. 5.4 divided by 0.005. Okay, so write this down as a fraction. 5.4. Oops, a bit better. That doesn't look like a 5, does it? Okay. Well, again, not written as a fraction, I just read the same thing. Okay, both numbers have got a decimal place, or decimals. Top number only has one decimal place, but the bottom number actually has 3 decimal places. So we're going to focus on the number that has the most decimal places, which is 0.005. What can I times 0.005 by so I end up as a whole number? Because it's 3 decimal places, I'm going to times it by 1,000. Remember, I've got to do exactly the same at the top. So let's do the jumping method. If you can't do it in your head, 1, 2, 3 jumps, decimal point there. So my answer is 5,400. Okay, the bottom number, 0.005, 3 jumps, 1, 2, 3 jumps, it's 5. Okay, now let's do the division. 5,400 divided by 5. Okay, how many 5s into 5, which is 1? How many 5s into 4? 0, so carry the 4 over. How many 5s into 40? It's 8. How many 5s into 0? 0 is 1,080. Okay, so you've got the gist there. It's exactly the same. We've done plenty of examples. Feel free to pause and answer the questions yourself and then follow me answering them with you. So key points are, you get your question, you write it as a fraction, you then times by either 10, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 if you have to get rid of the decimal places, and then it's just simplifying the fractions as far as you can, and then using your division method to divide to get your answer. Thank you for watching.